Good morning, Madam Hearing Examiner. How are you today? I cannot hear you.
Make sure you have your speakers on again.
They're on.
Plugged in. Take the volume down again. Okay.
David, can you hear me now?
Yes,
Okay, thank you.
I take it they didn't settle over the weekend.
No.
Okay, so City Las Cruces,
Let me turn off.
Mary Lee. And so she only has one for me, the public costing model. Okay. So county questions, Jennifer and who, Adrian? And Linda, where's the mute and all of that?
So over here on
You
this.
guys want to make sure, like, if I
Okay, so now you're gonna be here, so we gotta mute this. That's green. So you can see it, right? It went away. Or you can't see it anymore? I can see him. Yeah, but he's like, I guess it looks like he's doing it. I don't know why. Oh, hold on. Maybe it is. It's early. Well, maybe they didn't know. No, she's on video. A lot of people didn't turn it on. Yeah, people can like usually turn it off until. He needs to get adjusted looking at himself. But sure, once his glasses on or his glasses off, his tie, it's not. So. I'm sharing screen, but I don't see it over here. Let me try it one more time. I was seeing it and now I don't see it anymore. Yeah, because, oh, come on. It's not this screen that is over here. But it's not showing on this one, right? Why is that?
Because it's only, the meeting's only on this one.
Oh.
It won't show on this one, it will show on that.
Oh, I see. It's only gonna show the people over here, right? And everything is supposed to be muted. That's good.
And if you double click, like, out here on this, like, out here, like in this blank area, it'll go to full screen.
Oh, no. Yeah. I don't know. You go another place. They're gonna start doing
Yeah.
not that anyone can put it up. If anyone can let me, I'm kind of gonna do it. Oh, that's right. Yeah. Right? they need to go and get stuff at time too. Otherwise, they get behind and they're not social like the other two. Yeah, but then they don't know how to feel. And one of the problems like all day and then feel patient. Get in line. The people that go there simply slow. Get in line and go through the cafeteria. Staying in line and not getting out of line. Except for the first day.
Morning.
Does anyone want to address anything before we go on the record? Okay, I'll wait just about a minute longer before we go on the record. Okay, David, are you ready?
Yes, Your Honor.
Okay. Mr. Wexler, you may call EPE's next witness.
Thank you, Madam Hearing Examiner. EPE calls Stephen Barachik.
Mr. Barachik, would you raise your right hand, please? You solemnly swear the testimony you're about to give the matter now pending should be the truth, the whole truth, and nothing but the truth?
I do.
Thank you.
Good morning, Mr. Barachik.
Morning.
Do you have before you what's been previously marked as EPE Exhibit number 30?
I do.
Is that a copy of the direct testimony that you filed in this case?
Yes, sir.
Was that testimony drafted by you or under your direct supervision?
It was.
Do you have any corrections?
No.
Is the testimony true and correct to the best of your knowledge?
Yes, it is.
If you were asked the same questions that are posed in that direct testimony today, would you give the same answers?
I would.
Madam Hearing Examiner, EPE moves the admission of EPE Exhibit number 30.
Is there any objection? EPE Exhibit 30 is admitted.
Mr. Barachik, moving to your supplemental testimony, first supplemental, which has been previously marked as EPE Exhibit number 31. Is that supplemental testimony that you caused to be filed in this case?
Yes, it is.
Was it drafted by you or under your direct supervision?
It was.
Do you have any corrections to that testimony?
I do not.
Is it true and correct to the best of your knowledge?
It is.
And if you were asked the same questions in that supplemental testimony today, would you give the same answers?
Yes, I would.
Madam Hearing Examiner, EPE moves the admission of EPE Exhibit number 31.
Is there any objection? EPE Exhibit 31 is admitted.
All right, Mr. Barachik, turning now to your rebuttal testimony, which I'm noticing may have a numbering error that it is also. Nope, it looks like it's been marked as EPE Exhibit number 32. Is that reflected on your rebuttal testimony?
It is.
Is that rebuttal testimony that you caused to be filed in this case?
It is.
Was that rebuttal testimony drafted by you or under your direct supervision?
Yes, it was.
Do you have any corrections?
I do not.
Is it true and correct to the best of your knowledge and belief?
Yes.
If you were asked the same questions that are posed in your rebuttal testimony today, would you give the same answers?
Yes, I would.
Madam Hearing Examiner, we move EPE exhibit number 32 into evidence.
Is there any objection? EPE Exhibit 32 is admitted.
All right, Mr. Barachik, turning now to your second supplemental testimony, which has previously been marked as EPE exhibit number 33. Do you have that before you?
I do.
Was that second supplemental testimony drafted by you or under your direct supervision?
Yes.
Any corrections to that testimony?
No.
Is it true and correct to the best of your knowledge?
Yes.
And if you were posed the same questions, would you give the same answers on the stand today?
Yes, I would.
Madam Hearing Examiner, we move the admission of EPE exhibit number 33.
Is there any objection? EPE Exhibit 33 is admitted.
Mr. Barachik, turning to your third supplemental testimony, do you have that before you?
I do.
Was that third supplemental testimony drafted by you or under your direct supervision?
Yes.
Any corrections?
No, sir.
Is it true and correct to the best of your knowledge?
Yes, it is.
And if you were asked the same questions that are posed in that third supplemental testimony today under oath, would you give the same answers?
Yes, I would.
Madam Hearing Examiner, we move the admission of the third supplemental testimony, which has previously been marked as EPE exhibit number 34.
Is there any objection? EPE Exhibit 34 is admitted.
Turning now, Mr. Barachik, to your fourth supplemental testimony, do you have that before you?
I do.
Was that fourth supplemental testimony, which has been marked as EPE exhibit number 35, drafted by you or under your direct supervision?
Yes, it was.
Do you have any corrections?
No.
Is it true and correct to the best of your knowledge and belief?
Yes, it is.
If you were asked the same questions today under oath that are posed in the fourth supplemental testimony, would you give the same answers today?
Yes, I would.
Madam Hearing Examiner, I move the admission of EPE exhibit number 35, the fourth supplemental testimony of Mr. Barachik.
Is there any objection? EPE Exhibit 35 is admitted.
All right, Mr. Barachik, and last but not least, do you have before you the fifth supplemental testimony?
Yes, I do.
Was that fifth supplemental testimony drafted by you or under your direct supervision?
Yes, it was.
Do you have any corrections?
No.
Is the fifth supplemental testimony true and correct to the best of your knowledge and belief?
Yes, it is.
And Mr. Barachik, if you were asked the same questions that are posed in the fifth supplemental testimony under oath, would you give the same answers?
Yes, I would.
Madam Hearing Examiner, I move the fifth supplemental testimony of Mr. Barachik, which has been marked as EPE exhibit number 36.
Is there any objection? EPE Exhibit 36 is admitted.
Madam Hearing Examiner, with that, we tender Mr. Barachik for cross-examination.
Okay. Ms. Stevens, you're up and you have 120 minutes. And I will probably take a break around 10:30.
Thank you. Good morning, Mr. Barachik. I'm Anastasia Stevens. I represent the city of Las Cruces. And with 7 pieces of testimony here, we may have a little difficulty keeping things straight, but I'll try my best. And I hope that you will stick with me as well. At page 80 of your direct testimony, Mr. Barachik, you testify that Palo Verde represents approximately 45% of EPE's energy mix. Is that correct?
Just give me a second to get to page 80 of my direct.
You probably know this without needing to check the testimony.
Yes, that's correct.
And do you understand that under the New Mexico Renewable Energy Act, as of 2030, EPE will be required to procure 50% of the New Mexico energy from renewable resources, which do not include nuclear resources such as Palo Verde?
Yes, that number sounds correct.
So does that suggest in a general way that if Palo Verde 3 remains in the energy mix for New Mexico, only about 5% of New Mexico energy adjusted for load growth will be able to be sourced from EPE's existing gas-fired units?
I'm not sure where you got that number from.
Well, if 50% is renewable and 50% is conventional, and 45% is Palo Verde, that leaves only 5% of other conventional sources, doesn't it?
So I think what you're, and again, I'm not sure where you're getting that number from, but you've got to take into account load growth. And so as load growth, what happens is 45% would obviously decrease.
Mhm.
And then we are retiring some of the existing generation. And so you'd have to take all that into account to come up with an actual number.
And we will. Are you aware that Mr. Schiestel, in his direct testimony, estimated that the amount of energy that New Mexico gets annually from Palo Verde 3 is 307,476 megawatt hours?
New Mexico's portion?
That's the New Mexico portion of just Unit 3, the part that's an issue in this case.
I'll take your word for it. It sounds about right.
And
Okay, I'm going to interrupt you for a minute. I think I told you earlier that if a witness answers subject to check, I don't consider that evidence. Similarly, if a witness says, I'll take your word for it, I don't consider that evidence either. Or if a witness says, that sounds right. Same thing. Go ahead, Ms. Stevens.
Okay, would you like to then turn to EPE Exhibit 3, Mr. Schiestel's direct testimony at page 28? Can you do that, Mr. Ratchick?
Yeah, that's what page did you say, Ms. Stevens?
28.
Almost there. Okay, I'm on page 28, and if you just tell me the line number.
I don't have the line number in front of me because I have notes, but he, if you see, he used it's somewhere in the middle of the page. He came up with that 307,476 megawatt hours using a 39 megawatt allocation of Palo Verde 3 to New Mexico, a 90% capacity factor, and 8,760 hours in the year. So do you see that now? On that page?
Yes, okay. Give me just a second to read through this. Okay, yes, I see the number, and I agree with his calculation.
Do you? Because in your own testimony, you've used 40 megawatts as the Palo Verde 3 allocation to New Mexico. Is that a significant difference in your mind?
No, it's not. And these are, as Mr. Schiestel in his testimony also says, it's estimated at 39 megawatts, and mine also is an estimate.
So
hold on, Mr. Barasic, I can hear you, but your video is not working.
Oh, yeah.
For me, it's frozen.
Okay, yeah, everybody is frozen as well on my screen.
Now you're moving.
Okay.
And do you see us, Mr. Barasic? Are we still frozen?
It's choppy, Ms. Stevens.
Yeah, you just chopped yourself there. Well, we'll keep going, Madam Hearing Examiner, until we have a problem. Is that appropriate?
Yeah, as long as, I'd like to be able to, him not to be frozen. If that continues to be a problem, we may have to pause for a moment, but now everything seems to be okay.
So using Mr. Schiestel's estimate of 307,476 megawatt hours for New Mexico, which you said is reasonable, can we use that same number for Palo Verde 1 and 2 allocations to New Mexico as an estimate?
Yes.
So therefore, the total, New Mexico would have a total of 922,428 megawatts of nuclear energy year in and year out, just using this as a rough estimate.
Well, I think what's probably not being accounted for are refueling outages, which would lower that number.
And does the 90% capacity factor that Mr. Schiestel used, doesn't that reflect refueling outages?
Let me go back to Mr. Schiestel's testimony.
Just based on your operational knowledge, I think.
Well, I want to make sure I understand what his estimates are. Just feel a little uncomfortable doing math on the fly here.
I hope you have a calculator.
I do.
Good.
Okay. Yes. No, that's right. The 90%. That's correct.
And are you familiar with the company's 2020 load forecast presented to Mr. Novella's direct testimony as Exhibit GN5? Could you turn to that, please?
And I'm sorry, which?
This Novella's, this is EPE Exhibit 46,
Okay,
George
thank you.
Novella's direct testimony, and it's Exhibit GN5. So if you sort of drag towards the end of the
Sure.
document, I think you'll find it.
Yes, ma'am.
And Madam Hearing Examiner, I'm going to object to Mr. Barachik being testified to, being cross-examined about an exhibit presented by Mr. Novella. Certainly, Ms. Stevens is welcome to ask Mr. Novella about those exhibits.
Madam Hearing Examiner, Mr. Barachik's testimony talks about the need for Palo Verde presently and going forward. And this is a company document I assume he's familiar with, or at least has some knowledge of when he testified that Palo Verde is needed. So I don't see grounds for the objection.
And if there's anything in Mr. Barachik's testimony that Ms. Stevens would like him to testify to, I'm sure he's well prepared to do that, but he hasn't had the chance to study or evaluate Mr. Novella's exhibits.
Where are you going with this, Ms. Stevens?
I'd like to show that by 2030, when the 50% REA requirement takes effect, that the 39 or 40 megawatts from Palo Verde 3 presents a significant impediment to using the other items, the other conventional resources for New Mexico that are on Mr. Barachik's own exhibit STB1S, the 2020 Loads and Resources document. I think that in general, though, one can never separate the Loads and Resources document from the load forecast, the load forecast, because they're really part and parcel of the same project.
And is that based on the assumption that in 2030, these same rates are going to be in effect?
I don't think there's any assumption about the rates, Mr. Wexler. It's an assumption about the REA is going to be in effect, not about the rates.
Okay, I'm overruling the objection, but if at any time Mr. Barachik, you feel you can't answer a question because you're not familiar enough with another document that you haven't sponsored, you should say so.
And perhaps, Mr. Barachik, it would be helpful to you to turn also to your first supplemental exhibit 31 and look at the loads and resources table, which is exhibit STB1S in that document, because I think you'll maybe feel more comfortable when you see the similarities.
I'm sorry, Ms. Stevens. Exhibit, which EP exhibit are you referring to?
31, your first supplemental, which is just called
Yes.
supplemental. And this is the exhibit STB1S, the
Yes.
roads and resources 2021 through 2030. So what I'd like you to focus on is the 2030 column in this document, and then going to Mr. Novella's load forecast, the column on page 2 of 2, the first column on the left, and page 2 of 2, which also is the 2030 column.
And I'm sorry, page 2 of 2 of Mr. Novella's.
GN5, exhibit GN5 in Mr. Novella's direct.
Thank you.
I'm going to pause you for just a second while I go get that. Okay, this is which of Mr. Novella's testimonies?
This is Novella Direct, exhibit 46.
Exhibit
GN
46?
Exhibit EPE exhibit 46 on the cover. Novella
Oh, what
Direct.
page?
It's exhibit GN5. If you got it on paper, I'm not sure. It's page 49 of 52 of my PDF. So it's near the very end. Madam Hearing Examiner, now you've frozen. She's the only one who's.
So some of us are not frozen and
Some of us are not frozen and some of us are. Do we want to like do a roll call of who's with us and who isn't? Jeff, Mr. Ratchick,
I'm here.
are you alive?
We're
Yes.
here. I'm not sure we can do anything without the
I
hearing
know
exam.
we've lost the hearing examiner and until Mr. Lee, how about you?
Can I make a suggestion that we go off the record until the hearing
Yeah,
examiner?
let's go off the record, but who's got a way of reaching our hearing examiner? Mr. Lee?
Yes, ma'am.
Or do we just wait?
I'm certain she's trying to get back on. So my suggestion is we
Just
wait. Yeah.
I wonder if she's got to start the whole thing up again. So we're off the record, right?
You're off the record.
This is better than in December. I did a Supreme Court oral argument by Zoom, and I was talking to the one justice who wasn't in the courtroom and not realizing that the other 4 who were in the courtroom couldn't hear me. So I mean, it could be worse. We only have one hearing examiner here, so we know we're off the record without her.
I will try to email her.
Uh-huh.
I don't have her email address. Yeah. I don't have it in this computer.
It's just Carolyn.glick at state.nm.us.
I believe so.
Yeah. I mean, just type in her name.
You appear to be missing quite a few people.
Others who were previously here? Because we didn't have a big turnout this morning, I don't think, at least for mine.
There were more on the screen than what appears now. I cannot tell you by name because I don't have them memorized.
I think Jason Marks is one party that was present earlier that's not here
Yeah,
anymore.
no, I saw names for Keith Herman and Robert Lundeen.
And Mr.
Not
Bagatko.
pictures. And who else?
Mr. Bagatko.
Oh, Bagatko, yeah. So I hope it's not like my Supreme Court case and they're going on doing a hearing. Well, our witnesses, we still got Mr. Ratchick. Well, he's stepped away, but we still got his window there.
Miss Stevens, you were saying load, L-O-A-D, growth, correct? Now I cannot hear you, Miss Stevens.
Yes, I can. Yes, that was what I was saying, load, L-O-A-D.
For everybody's information, I am in
Here's some text messages coming through.
Phoenix, and I understand the power is out in Santa Fe. It may be out.
Oh, really? I'm on the northwest side of Santa Fe and I'm okay.
Well,
I hear that
my office is out of power.
Oh, okay. Let me see what these text messages are. Give me a second here. It looks like. Keith says we were all seeming to have internet. I 702.260. My Comcast completely shut off. Keith, I'm trying to see who I know that, whether I know who that is.
Ours is off too, so that may be the same problem.
Well, that's going to be a problem, isn't it?
Miss Stevens, I suggest we just settle this case and say you won a resounding victory.
Sounds good to me. But seriously, will Miss Glick phone us at some point?
I do not have her number. To you, and I'll give her a call.
Oh God, does anybody have her
I might
number?
have it. Let me look.
I don't think I do, unless it's her old office number at Para Building. That's not going to be good for much.
I have a number. Let me call it.
Hope she doesn't have Comcast for her phone.
It's ringing and I have no answer.
That's probably not a good sign, is it?
I would say not. Miss Glick, it is 9:30 and I am David Lee, the court reporter, and you are not appearing on our screen. And we understand there may be an outage of Santa Fe. If you get the opportunity to give me a call, would you please do so at area code 602-999-1131. Thank you.
Sweetheart?
So I just received that message that says Carolyn will be calling around, but in short, Xfinity is down and won't be back up till this afternoon. So we are on recess till 1. Is that the message the rest of you have?
Yeah, Mary Lee, we just got that message from Keith as well. So I guess we'll sign off until 1. We'll be available by cell phone or email. So if anyone needs to communicate with us, and if we learn anything, we'll let you know.
Jeff, I always want to communicate with you.
Hey, Mary Lee, are you allowed in the Capitol?
I am allowed in, but I am working remotely for this session.
Oh, yeah.
I chose not to have anything to do with that Petri dish.
Yeah, that was very wise. It's crazy. I mean, just driving in, it's like, 20 cop cars or something this morning. So.
Well, yeah, and that's separate from, you got the pandemic crisis going on.
That's
and
true. That's right.
The
Yeah.
inauguration.
How many overlapping crises can you have at once?
Yeah, it's true.
And never underestimate the possibility of overlaying one crisis on another.
Yeah, we seem to intent on challenging ourselves the last 4 years, so we'll see.
Yeah, well, so I think it's cozy right here in my little Zoom cockpit, and I'm going to be doing this Zoom and legislative Zoom, and that suits me just fine.
That
You look
sounds
great in red, Mary Lee, though. You look ready to fight. So Jeff, you're down to, you're at your office, right? And you have power.
we have power, so we're on the north side too. So maybe it's
Well,
there's.
yeah, I'm at my house. My office isn't far from you, but I'm at my house.
Oh yeah, yeah. So we
It's
still
a
have.
side outage is what I understand.
Yeah.
What about the roundhouse, Mary Lee? Are they down?
I have no idea. I've been excused from my responsibilities this morning, so this is the only thing I'm paying attention to.
Oh, but if you're excused this morning, what about this afternoon? Are you excused all day?
I'm gonna work it day by day.
Okay. I just wanted to know whether.
Call from the commissioner or from the hearing examiner. Hold on. Hello.
It's Xfinity.
How are you? The parties have offered to discontinue the Zoom connection and restart at 1 o'clock unless we hear earlier that we should come back. All right, can you give me your number, or is this the number I called? All right, that's the 505. Thank you very much. I'll let the parties know. You bet. Bye-bye. We should recess until 1 o'clock. Is there anybody you guys can contact and let know that?
Well, we'll contact all of our witnesses and everybody involved from EPE. Are there others? I mean, we're happy to help.
I'm afraid I don't have the numbers of Mr. Belgaco, Mr. Marks, or anybody else.
Sure, I'll call Mr. Marks and Mr. Bagacco.
So I'm thinking Keith Herman and Robert Lundin.
Keith knows about it, but he's the one who's sending out these text
Okay,
messages.
then he
I
knows
don't
about
know
the
whether-
1 o'clock
I don't know-
reconvene.
And I don't know whether the mystery person on this, does anybody know 505-702-2266? Is that John Bogatko or Robert Lundin? Does anybody know?
I actually think that is John Bagacco, but I can,
It says my Comcast completely shut off, but that's the only. I figured Keith was talking to that group. I think that's John.
yeah, I'm just checking right now. No, his mobile is 918-901. Yeah, so I'm gonna
Right.
sign off. We'll see everyone at 1. I will call Jason and John.
Thanks, everyone.
Okay.
Take good
Hey,
care.
Hey, Jeff,
Should I
Jeff,
call
I
Robert Lundin then, or do we?
I would just suggest sending an email to the service list as well, just to catch
Okay.
anybody.
Yeah.
Yeah, good
That's a
idea.
Thank you,
Thank
Phil,
you.
for thinking.
Okay,
Well,
bye.
or at least to the
People
Zoom
using
invitation
Comcast.
list.
Yeah,
What?
good idea. I'll do that.
Yeah, good point, Mary Lee.
What was
Bye.
that, Mary Lee? I was talking.